Welcome back to another episode of What to Do with the Coronavirus. Is that the unofficial name of this? I don't know. I'm Anthony Sena today, once again talking with.
Dr. Michael Smith.
We've been known to put together a few podcasts before. You may have heard this voice on Fusion Health Radio. We've got another podcast project that we're working on right now, but we're doing these episodes because they need to happen. This is kind of the gap that goes between our original podcast and what's coming up next. We're talking today about the 3 stages of infection. Michael, a pretty important thing to be discussing. Yesterday, we sort of talked about living on Mars and gerbils. Want to bring people up to date with that idea who might have missed that conversation?
Yeah, so the first thing to be really mindful of is about barriers. And, one barrier would be washing your hands because, you touch something, you touch your face, gets into your mucous membrane, you get sick. And that's all kinds of viruses, not just COVID-19. So because we're dealing with something that's easily transmittable and doesn't show symptoms for a long time, it's what we call a latent vector pathogen because its little arrow of activity is latent or hidden. We might call it the ninja virus in some way because it's sneaky. So people have to just be a lot more on top of keeping the sense of barrier between what's going on in their house and what's going on outside of their house. In a way, humorously, hopefully, especially for children, like you're playing a game where you're all living on Mars and your house is a hab module where everyone's safe and happy and, it's not Mars. And to keep it fun and playful and easy to remember and easier for young people to wrap their very frantic hearts around sometimes, I just encourage people to pretend that when you're outside, especially if you're going to the store, if you're going to any place where there may be crowds in any way, is pretend that those people are Martians. And Martians have this game of gerbil tag, where Martian gerbils like to jump 3 feet and see if they can tag other people. For anybody over about 10, 12 years old, that might seem a little bit too childish, but at the same time, I find it comforting, and I'm in my 50s, to just sit there and go, yeah, well, I just have to, have a sense of humor about, where I stand in the grocery store aisle when people decide to pass me and what I wear. And we did a pretty extensive episode on that yesterday, so it's up on both Autoimmune Health Solutions on YouTube and on the Autoimmune Health Solutions on Facebook. It's about an hour, but it's I think a pretty thorough conversation, and it's not boring. It gives you what you need to know, and it gives you some reference points for how to think about it. So I would encourage anyone to go back, look at that, take some notes. And today is going to be pretty much a hopefully slow motion avalanche of taking notes because I want to keep it down to less than an hour. But I also want to give people a real clear sense, kind of common sense, almost folk medicine common sense about how infections work. And specifically, given how infections work, how the COVID-19 or SARS-CoV-2 vector for this pathogen actually works, and why it is it's killing a specific population of people, more than everybody else. So we'll get into that, and I'm going to also talk about behaviors, choices, some supplements, some Chinese medical ideas, and things like that that could possibly help you. But because I have a medical license, and because both YouTube and Facebook are getting really, really kind of on a hot tin roof about what they do and don't allow to be promoted on their pages, I've made the decision to not give people exact dosages, because with this information, you can write it down, look at it. If I'm not giving the exact dose, then you have to look up the exact dose. So you are researching this yourself. And much, much more importantly, if you're researching this dose right next to whatever you're looking up, contraindication with, fill in the blank of whatever medication you're taking. People have already died taking natural supplements, along with things like CBD, along with other pharmaceutical medications, along with something like grapefruit juice, which, if you know what all those things imply, are the perfect storm to basically toxify your blood and brain by mistake. So instead of throwing out a mountain of ideas and dosages, and for people who might be panicking and just stuffing their face with things, I'm just going to share with you the research, the why they work.
So, sorry, that idea that you just shared there about people dying from contraindications or taking supplements and medicines, that's even prior to anything to do with coronavirus, correct?
That would happen no matter what. It's just now
Right.
people are getting like, I would say the fistfuls of what people are doing are getting a lot more reflexive or instinctual. I
Sure.
mean,
So I just wanted to be
whether
clear
or not,
that
go ahead.
I just wanted to be clear on that idea that you're suggesting that how people take medicines and supplements and that sort of stuff was always a concern,
Oh,
and
always.
now it's even more so.
Well, yeah, now it's more so because people are in a highly reactive state if they're getting symptoms or if they have immune compromised relatives or they're just kind of a fighter and they want to swing for the fences just because it seems like the right thing to do. So I'm not
Hmm.
judging anyone who's making proactive decisions. It's just if you're not doing it with medical support or advice, you're going to potentially make mistakes.
Right.
And you want to
Right.
be as precise to this as you can. So again, that's why I'm dividing this up into 3 stages. I think they're pretty common sense, and then we'll go into what to do and why, and then you can research whether or not each of those makes sense to you if you're going to take the time to put them into practice, and of course, check out contraindications. And hopefully, while you're waiting for pots to boil and things to dry and all the other fun things we'll get into, you can get a hold of any of the people who practice Chinese medicine who are all committed to telehealth practice. If you're their patient, call them, say, can I have this kind of a conversation with you like you and I are having right now, or Skype or something else? And then they will be able to give you, given your actual situation, the precise formulas or the precise sort of folk remedies that will help you the most. This is not an action movie where machine gunning all of the guys in the other colored uniform is the strategy here. We want to be very sequential, very specific, because things can go badly if you do it in the wrong order or if you do it too intensely.
Sure. Well, and I just want to take a quick moment here to introduce this idea. I mean, we're doing this at a distance. Technology being what it is, we're actually recording this as a video, and also we're recording the audio portion of this to put it up differently. So putting the video up on Facebook and YouTube, if that gets compromised in any way, there's going to be the podcast version of this available through
Right.
Fusion Health Radio.
Yep.
So just to make it clear that access to this information is going to be available if we come over any sort of hurdles. We're going to aim to make those speed bumps so you can carry on your way. So let's get into the ideas here. The 3 stages of infections. Where do we
Okay,
start with
so let's go
that,
back to the
that
Martian
concept?
gerbils.
Okay, back to Mars.
Back to Mars. So you've been in contact with a Martian, and somehow the Martian gerbil has gotten into your eye, into your mouth, onto your hand, which you touch your face with, which eventually migrates into your mucous membrane. The first line of attack is actually the defense mechanism of your mucous membrane. In Western medicine, we often refer to that as SIG-A or secretory IgA. Right, and that's just sort of the first line of immune antibodies that begin proliferating in response to any new form of life that gets into the mucus of your body, especially in your mouth, your nose, your eyes, and your lungs. It happens also in your GI tract. It's just slightly different situation. Interestingly, and worth sharing, is in traditional Chinese medicine, the term we use for this part of the immune system is Wei Qi. And I'll explain that word in a minute, but that would also include your mucous membranes and what is called your exosome, which is an actual 3-foot cloud of bacteria, immune system interaction, and load that's happening since the day you're born.
Hmm.
Right. So if you ever get into the microbiomes and the exosomes, you'll realize we're basically living, and this is so icky, in kind of a bacterial soup, all around us. I'm always reminded of the cartoon character from the Peanuts cartoon. His name was Pigpen. He always walked around with dust all around him. So I'm old, so I remember these old cartoons, but that's a great image to have in your mind that, we're all walking around with little sort of dust bunnies or something floating around us. And that thousands of years ago, Chinese medicine kind of came up with a general understanding that, okay, well, I mean, there's something that's innate within us and our immune system that's trying to protect us, and it's about us, but it's the first line of interaction with us in the outside world.
So
And
we would be our own little sun in the middle of our own little universe of stars around us. Like we're kind of at the middle of some.
Maybe it would be better to be the planet, and this is our atmosphere.
Okay, sure.
Okay, because, and I'm not going to go too far off on this, but the Chinese character for Wei Qi, Wei is a character that describes a person in an army holding onto the flag that says, "Follow me towards the bad guy."
Hmm.
Right. So in thousands of years of Chinese, land warfare, there was always the people who had the big flag that says, "Okay, cavalry, follow me over the hill. We're gonna go into the valley and get the bad guy." So that's the understanding that what we can do not only to have a protective Wei Qi atmosphere to keep our planet happy, but more importantly, the idea you can direct its effort. You can focus your body's exosome and IgA immune system, the secretory part of it, if you alter it in the right way.
Hmm.
Right? So the first thing you do not want to do at all is have sugar.
No sugar. I mean, that's not a new concept.
Not for me, but it's definitely something everyone has to basically. I'm having a Crohn's and colitis flare up, just to be honest. I'm not sleeping very well. That's like constant nausea and the urge to vomit. So I'm doing my best to be really coherent here. But if I choose an example that's coming from a tired, nauseous place, forgive me, but that's where this is coming from. So I often ask my patients to think about taking some vice grips and clamping it onto their finger.
Okay.
It's going to hurt, and it's only going to stop hurting when you take the vice grips off.
Okay.
So biochemically, sugar is going to damage the actual surface tension matrix of the polysaccharide structure of your mucus, which has something called surface tension, which maybe people understood what I meant there, but basically it changes the thickness of the goo of your snot and the throat mucus. And it makes it like a water slide for bacteria and viruses to go from your mouth right into your stomach or right into your lungs.
So sugar is the grease that allows things to move easier, quicker, faster into you.
While it builds little tiny runnels of structural change in the surface tension of a highly complicated mucoid structure.
Hmm.
Like it changes its shape. Alcohol changes its surface tension and its viscosity in another way. So it again makes it more easy for these things to actually go from the outside to the inside. So if you're trying to keep the army on the front line and you're ingesting things that put big, huge water slides of free travel for the enemy to get into your body, that vice grip metaphor about what is actually worth doing for long-term well-being and what's not kind of comes to mind, which is you're basically just clamping on and holding on for more pain because you're making decisions that are inevitably going to cause you more symptoms. And in this situation, nobody wants to be messing around, because if it gets deep enough into your body, then you're not at stage 1 anymore.
So no sugar, no alcohol. It's kind of, or could be construed as the same thing, I would think. I mean, how many, I'm thinking of things like amaretto or any other kind of sweet.
I mean, there's all kinds of stuff. So I'm just going to say that's the first picture I want you to have is the front line. Stage 1 is your secretory IgA or your Wei Qi. And we'll come back with some specific strategies for that. But if you can picture that and picture that it's about the health of that mucus and how far away from you other people's mucus is, that's a good start. Stage 2 is when the virus has actually gotten into the mucus and is starting to use an interaction with what are called interleukins, kind of your B cells and T cells, white blood cells that have more specific activity. And that's actually how viruses produce a kind of life energy. Because as the immune system naturally starts to fight off against the virus can hijack part of the process and use that to take it deeper into the body, right? And this is one of those very tricky things where if you overly aggressively amp up your immune system's effort, you can actually overly aggressively amp up the progression at which the virus is using this machinery to propagate itself deeper into your body.
That almost seems kind of cruel. That it actually
cruel.
CRUEL, cruel, yeah.
The same is also
well, that whole process just seems fascinating and cruel all at the same time. Anyways, sorry, go on.
Yeah. So we don't want to over strengthen, overstimulate. So when people think I need to take a bunch of immune tonics at that point, that may or may not be the strategy to do, because immune modulation, keeping your immune system in a safe boundary, is actually better. And in just the same way, immune suppression is probably 5 times more dangerous, because now it can basically tell your immune system to do whatever it wants, in the sense of the way the virus is hacking the production of B cells and T cells, right?
Hmm.
So this immune modulation part is really, really important. And this is, again, where Chinese medicine has made, for thousands of years, some of the most potent and useful distinctions, which is why a combination of TCM and Western medicine had such value in Wuhan and in China. Now, I've been teaching Chinese medicine for 25 years, well, practicing it, but also teaching it. And the reason I bring up teaching it is trying to explain how China... trying to explain how Chinese medicine terminology works from an ancient language to modern science can get a little bit tricky. Because at this part of the process in Chinese medicine, we're making the distinctions from a Chinese medicine point of view as to whether or not the nature of the change in your respiratory mucus and immune system is getting too coagulated, or the surface tension is getting too thick, which we would call cold. Right. And then again, if you have a lot of sugar, or you have a lot of carbohydrates in your diet that affect your immune system below that, it can actually make the respiratory mucus a little bit too thin, as an example.
Just a quick question. I hope it's a quick question. When you say sugar, I'm thinking of things like refined sugar, sweets, candies, that sort of stuff, as being the typical bad sugar. But what about natural sugars, like fruit sugars, or that sort of thing? Is that also...
Less is more. I mean, if you're going to have fruit, have berries, because they have this tiny much sugar compared to fiber and a bunch of actual useful nutrients. Right? If you're going to eat a bunch of papayas and stuff, that may or may not be the ideal thing to do, because the carbohydrate load lasts longer in your blood.
Got it.
Anyway, so I'm not going to get too far into that. I'm just asking people to appreciate that your best option is to combine Chinese medicine and Western medicine, because if you're talking to someone who understands Chinese medicine and you talk about your symptoms, they'll be able to provide for you the right kind of specific formula for the metaphoric description we have of cold turning to heat, with respect to dampness and changes in the structural capacity of your lungs and things like that. Because I'm focusing more on integrative medicine in my work right now, I try not to drag people through the Chinese terminology, because so few people understand that it's metaphoric to structural changes in parts of your body. They think that these things are things because they don't speak Chinese. They just borrowed some Chinese sort of shorthand terminology and run with it. And that's just as likely as not to go badly if they don't really think it through. So I'm saying that if you have a good TCM clinician, they're going to help you as much as anyone, because they're helping the terrain in which this virus is moving, no matter what version of science you're thinking about it. But Western medicine doesn't talk about that really at all, in any specific way.
Right. And just real quick, TCM, traditional Chinese
medicine, yeah.
Yeah, just want to make sure people know a little bit of lingo.
Okay. So that's sort of the fundamental thing with the stage 2, is now the virus is beginning to proliferate and hijack part of your immune system, because it's living in your respiratory mucus. And it's actually trying to find its way as far down the bronchial tree, the little, airways that get down to the microscopic, size of alveoli and capillary beds, where the gas exchange happens between your lungs and your blood supply. And that's actually where stage 3 happens, is in this very unique interactive part of the immune system and the physiology and the anatomy of your lungs. And again, that's why in stage 3, it goes usually a lot more intense and a lot more rapidly, and people end up on ventilators, because all of the mucus and all of the kind of die off from your immune system fighting the good fight to kill off the virus, fill up the alveoli with more mucus. They cause more inflammation and hardening within the normal permeability between the lungs and the vascular system. If you have a pre-existing respiratory condition or vascular condition that makes them in any way weak, frail, or brittle, say like diabetes, heart disease, high blood pressure, previous pneumonias, excessive use of antibiotics, COPD, underlying immune system problems like that. So we have this, keep it on the outside, but if it's on the inside, now you're dealing with something in a mucus, behind the lines kind of environment. And then if it goes deeper, now you're dealing with something that's actually going to attempt by, intention or not, the capacity for you to actually have gas exchange between your lungs and your blood supply. And again, if you already have a lot of pre-existing conditions, you should be really making sure you're paying attention, because you're the person highest at risk. If this gets from stage 1 to 2 to 3, you're the person who's going to be on the ventilator with everyone praying that whatever good mojo and chi is in you is going to actually, kick this thing out. And again, the combination of Chinese herbal medicine specific to those kinds of kind of deeper pneumonia-like processes, where you're going from standard pneumonia to a double pneumonia to literally on life support. There are still things you can do to help people with the proper physiology and circulation and function of that specific interactive part of the immune system in your lungs and your blood supply. So not making anything up here. This is just sort of standard hierarchy of order of problem solving. But that's the situation we're all in, and all of us are in stage 1 until no one in your city has had a problem for 3 weeks.
The concepts that you're sharing, then you're saying sort of is an introduction to the whole idea of just how it is we exist every day. I mean, this is regardless of whether or not COVID-19 actually is there or not.
Yeah, it's just a really good teacher because it's a really sneaky pathogen.
Right. That was so you sort of covered stage 1 and stage 2.
Talk about stage 3, where it happens, where they connect.
Right.
So now, go ahead.
I was going to say, so what's next?
So now I just want to go through stage 1 again and offer a whole bunch of strategies that I have in place in my home that I recommend all of my patients are doing.
Right. So this is where we all get the pencil and papers ready.
Hopefully you already have some headings and some questions, but yeah.
Here we go. Okay.
So the thing that I have found to be the most consistently effective in every flu season throughout my medical career is something called a DC oil protocol. And that's vitamin D, vitamin C, and some kind of fish oil, krill oil, cod liver oil, those kind of things. And again, I'm not giving out dose, but if you've seen my YouTube videos in the past, we did a much earlier video on this a few weeks ago. And I think I gave the formula out in that. I'm just aware that the only way that we can keep this video on things like Facebook and on YouTube is not to be giving people clinical medical advice, because that's just high risk and lawsuits abound kind of thing. So go and look up that DCO protocol. It's pretty famous around the world for going into troubled areas. And you would take that 3 times a day, vitamin D, vitamin C, and some fish oil. Now, because we want to maybe be mindful of where stage 2 is starting, I would also use a zinc lozenge every day. Right, or take some zinc of some kind every day with your DCOL protocol, just because it's more prominent at that SIGA level of the immune system at fighting the virus off.
Right. I just had a quick thought. Is any of this information listed on autoimmunehealthsolutions.com on your website?
On the website, yeah. If you're looking for, there's one article on my website that's called, I think it's something like preventative ideas for fall, or how to prevent the fall flu or something like that.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. Maybe if there's enough interaction with people and someone asks me specifically for that link, then I can add underneath of this. Again, I feel like I'm playing some strange part in a strange film here by saying, I'd love to tell you everything just right here and now, but that means you'll never find it. So we're going to have to play
Right.
the silly game.
Right. Okay.
And I have to
So
respect everyone's trying to, deal with their inner lawyer and stuff. So most important thing, no sugar, no alcohol, no excessively spicy food, no excessively processed food, no excessively fried food, nothing that's going to mess up your frontline immune system. Eat healthy, eat ancestral, eat stew, eat simple, vegetables, a little bit of protein, good amount of fat, simple, simple, simple. Lots of broths and soups. Do not drink any cold fluids. Do not drink fizzy things. Do not drink fizzy cold things with sugar in them. That is like basically, come on and play, bad virus. I've made a little water tunnel right for you into the center of my chest. So that's really important. There are two specific Chinese herbal formulas that are used at this point to help protect people in that sense of Wei Qi. I'm not going to name them because that will potentially put a run on people going to every Chinese clinic and store and shop and maybe use them properly, maybe not. Call someone, ask them. I don't know, even if they charge you, they will just say, choose this one because I know your underlying condition and what we would call your the underlying pattern of harmony and disharmony, which may sound fluffy, but it's kind of like a diagnosis of momentum of your health. Another really interesting thing from the more First Nation side of what I've learned is to use cedar.
cedar, how? Like in what form?
Well, I mean, I have a cedar tree right out there, so when I'm thinking cedar, I just go and get some. But it's just to like rough it up in your hands, keep it around you as like a something on your body to keep your immune system responding to that. Some people would use an essential oil. I'm not a certified essential oil person. I'm not even sure what that actually means. I have a great deal of respect for essential oils because they're one of the most direct informational impacts to your central nervous system known to science. So it's definitely got legs. It's just also got a lot of people on roller skates making stuff up.
Right.
So I think having a diffuser with a little bit of cedar, maybe a bit of juniper, those kind of very specific, high volatile oil, but very dispersive and in the way I was taught to use cedar in the First Nation sense is to break up things that are stuck together. And that can happen across a lot of different levels. So that's the idea, is to just keep everything from, building in clumps and keeping your body expectorating clearly. Another thing might be eucalyptus and stuff like that, and those will be valuable in stage 2 as well.
Well, I've read that those oils are good things to be adding to a diffuser if you have something like that.
Yep.
So that in your own little pig pen atmosphere universe, you can introduce a whole bunch of healthier things. And if nothing else, I know for me, the smell of those things are very calming.
Yeah, and it's also, I think, just recognizing you're doing something that has been done effectively for probably 10,000 years. In the video we put up yesterday, I talked about why those fur cowls around people who live up north were such an important thing, not just an excuse to kill animals. That's one of the best antiviral barriers humans have ever invented. And in fact, when I was playing that video, or the video was premiering on YouTube or whatever, I popped on to just see what people were commenting on. And the biggest comment was, wow, I would have never thought that was why those people had those furry hats.
Mm-hmm. Well,
so I'm just saying there's some old school knowledge that maybe we haven't thought through really well, but it's been around for so long because it's worked for so long. So cedar, a good idea. If you're new to things like breath work, qigong, yoga, meditation, then you're going to want to go to the quickest way to access something effective. And that would be to find a Wim Hof breathing tutorial on YouTube. There's about 10 million of them by now. You can even find Wim himself up there showing you his basic routine. He's made a really interesting decision in the world of breathwork to simple it down, to make it the easiest to learn. So you can just lie on the floor, do the process, do the holds. shift your body chemistry. And the reason why I think this would be a good idea in the most basic sense for breath work to start with is they actually took him and a dozen of his students and they injected, I think it was LPS, it's an endotoxin from bacteria, to see if they could have the typical fever pain response. And these people were fighting off a part of the bacterial war of an infection without any symptoms because they had altered their immune system. So that just, for me, says, well, if you don't know much about breath work, maybe that would be a good place to start, to just give you a chance to de-stress, to decompress, to own the fact that this is you and your body. So let's get really intimate with you and your body. Let's take a little bit of risk by breathing harder and faster and going into some dissociative states you might not be familiar with, so that, again, you're building a sense of confidence through being empowered by being in action.
Just doing a quick Google search here. It's WIMHOF, and WimHofMethod.com is his website. So you could find out more information about what Michael's suggesting here online easily there.
Okay, so yeah, stage 2. Now you're dealing with peripheral symptoms like, dry throat, cough, that sense we all get of malaise and a little bit of fatigue when you feel like you're fighting something off. Now that's going to last from 4 to 7 days, right? If it just runs its course normally. So you want to stick with this next protocol, including everything you're already doing, the DC oil protocol, the cedar, the dietary choices, the breath work and stuff like that. And on top of that, you're going to want to gargle with salt and hot water every morning.
That sounds really simple.
Sound familiar though, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, any time I was a kid and had any kind of, I don't know, anything, my mother would just suggest, she'd get out the salt shaker and she'd...
Yeah. And where'd she learn that from?
I think it's instinct for old Italian ladies.
It's a thing that goes back through pretty much every culture in the world who's had access to salt.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I'm just saying, let's just take a moment and have some reverence for the fact that a lot of the ancient stuff is still in our minds because it got us here, because we didn't die, because it works. I was trying to just sort of like toot the horn of the ancestral meme for health, because a lot of us keep fishing into the, biohacking stuff, which is awesome if you're in good shape and you want to do something, outside of the rules of normal physiology. But for most of us, we just want to know something that's worked for 1,000 years is probably going to work today.
Right. So salt and warm water, hot water, first thing in the morning?
As soon as you get up, swish, 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 gargle, gargle, gargle. Maybe do it 3 or 4 times a day, just as a nice way to remind yourself you're not being, I don't know, lazy.
Yeah, sure. And so is there a reason why you would want to do it first thing in the morning, though? Or is that just...
Okay, well, this is... I'm trying to keep the technological stuff to nerd level 1 here, but salt changes the surface tension.
You could just say yes or no if you don't want to go too far down this road. Is the reason why you would want to gargle first thing in the morning with salt and water?
Yes. For thousands of years, yes.
Okay, good.
Not being grumpy here. I'm just saying, like, you want to go into it, we can go into it, but some of these things are a bit of a deep dive.
Yeah.
For those of you who don't know, it's got to do with surface tension mechanics. Okay.
Okay, good. Next.
Again, no cold beverages. No cold beverages with fizzy things. No cold beverages with sugar in them. I've already said that, but at this point, this is kryptonite. If you have viruses living in your respiratory mucosa and you're drinking something that turns your respiratory mucosa what we would call cold and damp, in a Chinese medicine point of view, you have a water slide for that virus to go right into your bronchial tree. I mean, it's literally, how fast can I make myself as sick as I can in this situation? Too much spicy food, bad. Junk food, bad. Anything that interferes with the entire mucous membrane of your body, bad. So let's all just be smart or good. Because those things will be very, very bad for you. The DC oil thing is really important, but now the zinc lozenge should be 4 times a day. If you can, get a zinc lozenge that's no dosages. Look it up so that we can all keep talking to each other with the modern internet situation. And try and get a zinc lozenge that has slippery elm in it.
Slippery elm, I've taken it in powder form before. And I can't remember what it was for, if it was something digestive or whatever, but it turns into this very sort of slimy, goopy, I don't know if fun is the right way to say it, but interesting thing to drink.
So what we're trying to do is regulate the surface tension stickiness of your respiratory mucus immune system. So I'm going to say something that is not for children, but it's not for young children who have overly protective parents. So you might want to pause this and take your youngins to watch what's happening with the neighbors or something. Or if you have a fairly mature relationship with biology, then we're fine. So as most people do or don't know, during the month of ovulation and menstruation for women, there's a change in the actual surface tension and structure of vaginal mucus. And when you're ovulating, that surface tension becomes thickened in a way and almost like a ladder, so that when semen and sperm enter the vaginal canal, they can literally scale that like little Navy SEALs or Buddhist monks or whoever you want crawling up there. Never mind, that's probably a little more imagery than we needed. But it's about rate at which something external can get as far internal as possible. So we flip over the idea of stairways. By using that slippery elm and zinc, you're slowing down the transit of anything moving through the respiratory mucus immune system, giving everything else a better chance to actually interact with it properly. Right? So if that was not appropriate, I apologize. I haven't slept in a while. So
that makes total sense. Great imagery. So
great imagery, just making sure, because I always wonder if you've ever gone too far. So another really good idea, and this is something we're going to be at for the next 3 weeks if you're taking this seriously, is try and have a daily broth, bone broth.
Bone broth.
If you don't have bone broth, take some store-bought stock, which you'll notice isn't broth because it doesn't turn into jello in your fridge, and just heat that up and add a little bit of seaweed, some kind of sea vegetables.
And that's going to thicken it up and make it kind of...
Well, it's going to have the same mucinogenic property in it as the slippery elm, just in a different way, and it's full of trace minerals, and it has that salt and the iodine and other things that can facilitate other strategies. But this would be a 5-hour thing if I explained every specific thing that's going on.
Sure.
I usually also put ginger and lemon juice in that broth.
Sorry, just writing this down. Ginger and lemon juice.
Yeah, or lime, something like that. High citrus.
To what end?
Because all of
is it the acid you're looking for?
No. So there's a lot of things that have to do with how vitamin C and bioflavonoids and what we're doing with the surface tension, with the salt, with the mucilage from the seaweed, all the minerals and the glycine from the broth to really rearrange this upper respiratory, upper digestive mucus immune sort of standpoint. So if you remember, there's that Wei Qi that's always trying to guide the army to the right place. You want the army to be as lined up, locked and loaded, and really ready to go as you can. So if every day you can have that broth, after you've gargled with your salt and spit it out, then 4 bowls of bone broth with your seaweed and your ginger and some lemon juice and things like that. Again, you're maximizing the cofactor of events to do something that's common sense, grandmother wisdom at home, right? To help the war that's now happening in the bronchial tree of your respiratory immune system. And that's a huge, huge thing. I'm not mentioning doses here, and I realize that this has been mocked ridiculously already on the internet with the pretend to know what they think they know people. Colloidal silver is effectively a great antiviral, but it's something that you need to use as a spray and a gargle and something you can swallow over and over and over again. So every time, if you have colloidal silver as a spray or something you can work with, then you could do that every time you use your zinc and or every time you use your broth. And since they're all a 4 times a day thing, you could maybe like have a little ritual that lasts a half an hour, and you might even want to gargle with salt and then chomp on your zinc and then have your broth and then try the next thing and then the next thing, so that you actually have like a little 20-minute meditation 4 times a day of like, this is me doing everything that basic traditional wisdom would suggest is a good idea. And again, although we're all freaking out about this in some pretty serious ways for some reasons we probably will never end up talking about, this isn't actually that much more terrifying than other viral pathogens that have moved through human civilization, several times. There have been lots worse ones, but there's been many, many other ones that weren't this bad. So what we're all trying to do right now is what they say, flatten the curve to keep the people who are the most at risk of death from this. So although you may not be that concerned and might want to do this once a day, the person who's more immune compromised would want to do this 4 times a day.
Mm.
Or if you're in a house with someone who's immune compromised, so that you got a hobby. I mean, it's not like you got to go to work and run around and go to whatever places you used to spend your time in the city.
Well, that whole process of actually being contemplative, thoughtful around putting together a meal is something that I've done for years. I mean, certainly we've talked about that. In the mornings when I put together my my smoothie, every time I put something into my blender, I say, "Hey, how you doing today?" And good morning, and thanks. It's like a gratitude exercise, right? And
Yeah, I actually tell my patients, especially if they have any First Nations background, is every time you take your supplements, put them in your hand, take a deep breath and blow on them and send a prayer into your supplements and ask them to do the best they can for you in the specific way you need their help. And then you take them and you swallow your thing and just take that moment of gratitude for the 1 billionth or the 100,000 or whatever the real number of real science behind that really is. But we say in Chinese medicine, the mind leads the qi, So if your intention is clear, you're doing something that's already good for you, like you said, thanks to me, some service today, you are going to see a change. I think actually the last time I saw research on this, it was 25% better results for people who had other people holding good intention for them and they didn't know. And it was 40% for people who were doing the intention work themselves and had other people praying for them as well.
interesting.
People got better without even knowing people were thinking about them. So just saying, there's something going on with what human intention is that's going to make a difference.
Sure. Well, I just noticed that, I mean, that's something that I do first thing in the morning, or whenever it is I actually get my keister out of bed in the morning and decide to make some breakfast for myself, that having that sort of intention makes food taste better, but it makes the day taste better too, if I can say that. I mean, it's just kind of a great place to start from. So if you're...
Why wouldn't we want to do that?
Why wouldn't you want to do that 4 times a day?
Yeah,
Yeah, or 3 times a day, or whatever it is that...
and this is
I mean, to
about
be that sort of...
This is about as woo-woo as I get, although we'll come back to something probably the same way. But if in fact we can measure a 25% improvement in people who are being prayed over or thought over and they don't even know it, if you're a person who's spiritual, religious, mindful in that way, and you're trying to find some way to interact with this process on a global level or just in your apartment building or maybe just in your town, every time you drink that broth, send the benefit of that as a thought and a feeling to the people in your city, in your hospital, on ventilators, or lining up in beds, barely able to breathe, hoping they get a ventilator.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I don't know. I'm not selling anything here. I'm not even giving doses out. I'm just saying, if I don't have anything to focus on in myself, I already have numbers of my patients who I'm sending my thoughts to, because they're the ones who need it just as much, if not more, than me.
Sure. Well, I mean, I know
And it feels good to stay in that kind of tribal association and collaboration. I'm not saying I have any literal belief in pretty much anything, actually, but I'm just saying it feels better. And there's math that proves it makes a difference. So
yeah. Well, I was just going to say that I know that in my life I feel better when I'm giving.
Yeah.
So Why the hell not? Right?
And I'm sure that's why we say it that way.
Mm-hmm.
So the other couple of things that are unique for the respiratory immune system and the mucus from Chinese medicine are, again, 2 or 3 specific herbal formulas for how you're responding in the sense of your fever and its rate of climb and whether or not you're getting chills, the quality of your mucus as you spit it up, the breath sounds you're having, it's harder to breathe in, breathe out, a whole bunch of little fiddly details which actually help a Chinese medicine clinician or doctor choose exactly the right herbal formula for you. And this has already been established in China. Like there's a printout, if you know enough about Chinese medicine, it's in Chinese, that says stage 1, these are the 3 formulas for this, stage 2, these are the formulas for this, and it's all there. But again, if you don't have access to people who can make those distinctions for you with that kind of training, I'm actually putting you in danger of making something worse. So I'm not going to mention those in detail because I don't know each of you well enough to make that distinction for you. But you could call someone. There's got to be a TCM doc somewhere who will talk to you on something like this. We'll probably look at your tongue and ask you a bunch of questions and say, this is the best choice.
Hmm.
Right?
Yep.
Another really good idea is to eat a lot of squash.
Squash.
Yep.
You mean like roasted?
Roasted, steamed, however you like it.
Okay. And why squash?
Well, you see, you want to eat the squash because it's got a lot of really good bioflavonoids and carotenoids in it. But more importantly, you want to take the skin and dry it in your oven and crack it into little pieces, and then use that as a part of your broth in the morning for your seaweed and stuff.
And does that have the same sort of effect by thickening it up and making it?
No, it has a really unique characteristic that the most common reason I get people to do that is for patients who are going to have an anesthetic.
Say that again?
The most common times I ask my patients to get dried gourd skins or squash skins and turn them into a broth, and there's lots of different ways you can do that. Other herbs you can add. You can even, if you went to a Chinese herbal store, gualopi, it's, the dried squash skins. So,
Okay.
you could take that and boil it up. But that has a really unique impact on the stability and strength of the deepest part of the immune system of your lung. And we're trying to keep this from turning into pneumonia. And that's why it's used in Chinese medicine in China if you have an anesthetic. So the post-operative likelihood of pneumonia, which gets higher as you get older or immune compromised, actually goes down. And it's an old folk remedy that's gone on for thousands of years. So as far as I'm concerned, it's got way more street cred than a bunch of graphs because people have been talking about it for thousands of years.
So for those of you listening to the podcast, you're missing all the hand gestures that Michael's making here when he's talking about street cred.
I'm not, so I try and pretend I'm in some kind of LA gangster movie sometimes because I'm shy and it
Yeah,
makes me feel better.
You need a checkered shirt and a bandana, but maybe the next
I want a big
episode.
tattoo on my neck. That's what I want. Yeah.
Okay, sure. So squash
2.
skin. Hang
Stage
on.
2.
Still on the squash skin idea. Does it matter what kind of squash?
Yellow, orange, reddish.
Okay. Cool.
Brighter the color, the better.
Okay. Okay, great. So you were saying stage 2.
Little recap. Gargle, salt water. Just get it over with. Make some broth. You don't have to make it 4 times a day. Make a nice pot and just ladle it out and scoop it anytime it comes to your mind to have some. Because you want to have that mucous membrane as mucousy and consistent as possible. Keep your DC oil going, but make sure you're doing zinc 4 times a day. I'm not telling doses because I don't want to get kicked off the internet because I actually want to help people, not selling anything. It's not our role.
Mm-hmm.
We talked about the squash skins. Did we talk about dried citrus?
Nope.
Okay. So the one last thing besides the please talk to a Chinese doctor about getting the right herbs, you can do the same thing you did with the squash skins with things like oranges, grapefruits, tangerines, lemons, limes, stuff like that. And when you dry them and then cook them into a soup, it's a really unique flavor. It's often mixed in with things like congee, which is a rice-based kind of like, if everyone's really sick in their stomach, you can have like white rice, white bread, kind of food. That's the Chinese version of that. So it's really overcooked rice with some herbs in it. But one of the most potent ones for this part of your immune system, it would be a dried gourd skin and or dried citrus skins.
Um, I'm just thinking of things my mom used to do with lemon peel when I was a kid, um, and thinking about your comments about thousands of years of tradition. So yeah, there's something to that. Definitely something to that.
Yep. Okay, stage 3. If we had music, it would be dun dun dun.
Do you want some? Dun, dun, dun. There you go.
Thank you. Apparently mine wasn't that good. So.
It's just a delay. Echo.
Yeah, there you go. So stage 3, again, is when the infection is starting to impact the direct anatomy and physiology of where your breath gas exchange into vascular tissue exchange happens. That's where the mucus builds up. That's where things become fibrous, calcified, inflamed. Once things can't move back and forth, that's when that kind of shortness of breath wheezing happens, because you're trying to force something through like a filter that's all gummed up with oil, right? So there's very minimal things you can do to physically extract that out of people, in an effective enough way to make that strategy the right thing to do. So what we need to do is protect the cells along that whole area of the inside of your lungs, because now the virus has gone from attack the innate immune system until enough of an adaptive response has fueled it to give it the energy and the numbers to go into a cellular attack. Because viruses basically just want to pop your cell open, drop some RNA in there, swim around on kind of the inside of the machinery of your cell and start replicating more of that specific broken filament of RNA, so it can go and run around and meet the universe, because it's Martian gerbils. It just wants to be everywhere. It's like a little fun game. Ha ha ha. That's when life and death damage starts to happen inside the structure of the cells. Not saying doses, but glutathione and acetylcysteine, liposomal glutathione, those are all the things that are going to have the most protective frontline capacity at that stage of this process.
And to be clear, those are supplements you're talking about.
It's a very specific amino acid that has to do with every detoxification chain and an intracellular, extracellular load. And in fact, if you're a Chinese medicine person, this is what some of us would metaphorically call the liver of your lungs.
Interesting.
In the sense that it's clearing off cellular destruction and damage by protecting it in the way your liver protects your body from breakdown from toxins and stuff.
And yeah, sure, but my point to saying those are supplements, I mean, if we're going to get those things,
look them up and research them and see if they are in concordance or contraindication with what you're already taking,
right?
Or you're a walking insurance debacle. Because you can't sue me, man. I'm not telling you to do anything. I'm not giving you dosages. I'm just saying, do the research, make sure it's okay with you, ask someone to be sure, because there's always a reason why every good idea for somebody else is a bad idea. This is generally the good idea for in general, and that's again why I'm being really careful with what I'm saying. Another really powerful thing you can do is, along with everything else we're already doing from stage 1 and 2, is get some beet powder.
Like the red things, beets?
Beet powder, yep. Not like beet powder from drums, beet like little red.
Yeah, the red things.
Yeah, the red things.
Okay, for
because
beet powder.
They have a high capacity to up our nitrous oxide. Nitric oxide is a really important molecule, and it's really important at vasodilation, especially at the microcapillary bed in your lungs. So you're helping solve one side of the reason people are suffocating, at least in some small way, by having the glutathione exchange keeping your cells from completely just crashing, and keeping enough nitric oxide in your vascular tissue to keep those vascular capillaries open and permeable. We're going to talk about breath work again, because you want to be doing the kind of breath work that's going to up your nitric oxide. So the Wim Hof breathing that I talked about before is great, the next conversation you and I have, I'm going to walk people through a kind of breath work that I kind of invented a few days ago specifically for this, because you want to maximize not only nitric oxide, but the physical stretching and mobilization of the fascial tissue throughout your lungs and the membranes around it. Because if that's already thin and compressed and old and atrophied because you've sat for 45 years at a desk like this, and the whole lung capacity isn't, I breathe 110% in and out most of the day. It's more like I breathe 30%, like your average North American uses 30% of their breath capacity. That saying, sitting isn't the new smoking. It's a catchy meme, but there's a lot of reasons why it's actually scary. So there's breath work you can do. Oh yeah, and always get out in the sun every day, stage 1, stage 2, stage 3. Lots of sunlight. Excuse me. More expectorant essential oils, yeah, like eucalyptus, that actually make you bring stuff up. You could do a more ginger, lemon, and unpasteurized honey tea, very little tiny bit of honey, unpasteurized. I use the stuff that's actually got royal jelly in it because of the kind of plants the bees live on, because I want maximum immune boost benefit with minimum amount of kind of chaos. But
Mhm.
if you can get anything that's going to expectorate more phlegm, that's less stuff dripping down, getting stuck in those little alveoli sacs where your life and death are determined in stage 3. Sorry, this is serious and scary, but I think we're all hopefully getting stronger and more fortified and familiar and resilient with the fact that we're all at risk here. To what degree, I don't know. To what degree this is some kind of governmental shenanigans, I don't know. I can't control the fact that if I go outside and stand around a group of my friends, the Canadian government will physically separate us and fine us now. So the world is getting to a place where it don't matter why this is happening in the sense of who's at fault or who's running the show. What matters is let's just kill the least number of people while whatever the hell else is going on is going on.
Mhm.
As a
Well,
little shout out to all my conspiracy friends who keep thinking this is just like a whole bunch of crap. So
I would think that the people tuning in to listen to us talk about this are okay with the heavier side of concepts that you're sharing, because I know for myself it really helps me paint a clear picture as to why what you're suggesting is actually useful. So
yeah, yeah.
yeah, I don't think you need to apologize.
No, I just like to be clear that I don't have a paddle in the water in any of these paradigms. I'm a clinician. I've made an oath to be of service in a very specific way. All these other things are kind of, I'll find out when I find out.
Right,
If I find out.
right.
So, more dried squash skins in your broth. At this point, you're going to be in the hospital, FYI, so you might want to have people coming to give you these things. If you still can meet people in the hospital at a certain point, that's going to be it. You might want to talk to the people in the ER or in the ICU or in the specific restricted ward that that person is about, loop lipozymal glutathione, super high vitamin C. That's been working in different countries in the world for sure during this stage. But this is when it's being medically applied through an IV with a doctor saying, let's use this dose based on milligrams per kilogram of body weight. So those are decisions that would be made in a hospital by hospital trained physicians if they decided to go a little bit outside of the playbook and try something really a bit, well, smarter. They're already doing everything they can with various treatments for the bacterial viral pneumonia, the double pneumonia that this can turn into, which I'm not going to cover. That gets pretty complicated. The Chinese medicine herbal formulas get very, very specific because you're treating different forms of pneumonia from a Chinese medicine point of view. So again, you need a very well-trained Chinese medicine person to come up with those and make those distinctions and potentially even be able to visit with this person in the hospital or see them and talk to them before they end up this far into it to know what that person would need if they end up in the deep stage 3 situation. And the statistics are things are going better when you do everything together than just one or the other or the other. So megadosing supplements like glutathione and vitamin C, that's hard to shake a stick at that as a bad idea. Using the specific antibiotics that have an intracellular antiviral secondary effect. Antibiotics usually aren't used for virals, but some have this secondary effect. they can be used if they're used by the right people in the right way. So that's a possibility. There's all the anti-pneumonia medications and treatments and things like that already that are out there. And again, the Chinese herbs that you would be using at that level or that stage of this would be determined probably before you got that sick. So if you're immune compromised, you've been around a lot of Martian gerbil infected people, you're starting to get symptoms, then the best thing you could do is get in touch with somebody who really knows about this stuff so that they can say, well, if you go to stage 2 with your health and your pattern of, your constitution and things like that, your medical history, this would be the best choice. And then if it goes to stage 3, very likely it's going to be this or that. So let's all be very preventative in how we line up the things that we decide are going to be necessary when really the proverbial Martian rubber hits the road of what COVID-19 can do when it gets really deep inside your lung cells.
Mm. I'm just conscious of the time there, Michael, just to let you know we're in over an hour.
What?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I was just going to say I'm pretty much done if you wanted to ask any questions.
Well, you had mentioned something about some kind of breathwork exercise. I'm not sure if you wanted to get into that in
Well, if we're
this
already in
recording.
an hour, then that would just be, it's a breathwork class, so we'll do that as a breathwork class.
Okay, yeah, maybe we can. Next, tune in next time.
Yeah, and I'll try and make sure I have my phone's being charged in the other room, so I don't have a clock. But that didn't seem like an hour to me, so I apologize. That's one page of notes. So
That's okay. Information is helpful when you explain it in detail, and we managed to skip over some things to make it even clearer. So I don't know that I have any specific questions right here, but I'm curious if our listeners do. The best way for them to get back to you about whatever it is you suggested here. We're going to be posting this on the Fusion Health Radio page.
it'll
Is
be
there
up
another?
on the Fusion Health Radio page as a podcast, so that'll be audio. It'll be on the Autoimmune Health Solutions page as this Zoom video, and then it'll be on the Autoimmune Health Solutions YouTube channel as this video.
So a few places that people can actually reach out and connect with you.
If you go to those places, write in questions, we'll get them. Once we figure out how to actually do a live thing with the two of us where people can ask questions, then we'll be able to do that. And if anybody knows how to do that and would love to give me a tutorial and it's not really complicated, I'm game. Or get a hold of this guy.
Yeah, teach me so that Michael doesn't have to stress his brain out with little fiddly buttons and things on the internet. Okay, so lots of places for people to gain access to this information and get in touch with you.
Yeah.
If you have any ideas about whatever we've talked about, please let us know. Share this video and share this podcast with your friends. And I guess, what's the next topic of conversation going to be? Do you want to do that breathwork one?
We're going to do a breathwork class so that we can all figure out exactly what kind of movements and kind of imaginary gestures we can do to facilitate the best restoration and depth of that whole matrix of alveoli to vascular connection.
Great. A very thorough investigation into the 3 stages of infection today, featuring Dr. Michael Smith and me, Anthony Sana. Thanks for tuning in. I guess we'll see you in the next podcast video.
Great. Thanks, Anthony. And I'll try and be more organized and shorter.